Hello, I'm Luke. I'm doing 100 Days of SwiftUI. I'm up to day 7, and we're going to look at functions. All right, let's give the tests a try for writing functions. Well, func read user input while true print. Uh, it doesn't have a closing brace for the func. I don't think that's valid. Yeah. All right, it's got function instead of func, which isn't valid. Yeah, this looks valid. The function's valid, and it's calling share to Twitter. So that should be valid. Okay, its score goal doesn't have any parameters, and these are sending it with parameters, so it's not going to be happy with that. Yep, that looks valid. That looks valid to me. Oh, ID. Okay. Ah, it's called order. Okay. Yeah, that looks valid. Ah, case sensitive. Okay. This looks valid. This looks valid too. This doesn't have the parentheses after study, so this is not valid. It doesn't do anything, but it is valid, I believe. Yeah. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to do the test for accepting parameters. It's got to do as int. It's going to be passed in. Yeah, I think this is valid. Okay, it's a string. It's going to, okay, it's called the destination to where it should actually be destination, so that's not valid. This does look valid. This does look valid. Okay, with this lapse, it says is expecting a string, but it's using it as an int, so that's not valid. Okay, it says the gifts is an array of ints, but it's actually passing in an array of strings, so that's not valid. This looks like it's valid. It's passing in an int and it's used as an int throughout the function. It's case sensitive. Tricky. This does look valid. This looks valid. Okay, it doesn't have the colon after the kilometers, so that's not valid. Yep, it's got name as a string and it's treated as a string. Yeah, it looks valid as far as I can tell. Good. So we can switch case on a integer, so that's fine. It's expecting a print integer. Right, this is not valid because for a switch statement, it's got to be exhaustive. So it's got to have like what happens if the number is above 100,000 or below 0. So this is not going to be valid. Okay, so one wrong, not too bad. Okay, I'm up to the next test, returning values. So is this Swift code valid or not? So it's taking in an array of strings. It returns a Boolean. So it's always going to return the Boolean, so that's valid. Yeah, this looks valid. Okay, write to log. So it takes in a string and returns a Boolean. And in either condition, it's going to return a Boolean. So I'd say this is true. Okay. It's an array of ints. So it's going to return false if it's under 80. Otherwise, it's going to return true. So it's always going to return a Boolean, although we don't have Boolean as a return type. So this is not valid. Okay, this returns an int and it's returning a Boolean, so this is not valid. Okay, this returns a Boolean, but it only returns if the color is tartan. If the color is not tartan, it doesn't have a return for that condition, so it's not valid. Okay, this takes in an int, returns a string. That does look valid. Okay, multiples of 10. Takes in an array of ints, being passed an array of ints, returns an int. This I'm not sure if we can have numbers in the function name. I don't think we can. Oh, that is valid. Okay. Okay, this doesn't return from the function at all, so it's not valid. Alright, it takes in an int and returns an int. Although in this case, it's returning strings, not ints, so this is not valid. Okay, this looks valid, takes in an array of tests, and it's doing a for loop through the array. This looks valid to me. This takes in a string and returns a string, although return is not spelled correctly, so that's not valid. Okay, takes in an array of ints and returns a boolean. Yes, that looks valid. Okay, so one wrong. Not too bad. Okay, let's take a look at the test for tuples. So which of these statements about tuples are true? Tuples must always be created as variables. You can name tuple items. Or you can name tuple items. You can access tuple items using numerical positions. All values in a tuple must be unique is not true. They can be identical, so it's clearly option 1. Tuples store values together in a single value. That is true. Tuples cannot hold monoline strings. That's not true. Was created by putting the item inside parentheses. This is true, so it's option 2. Can't change the type of tuple items. Tuples can only hold strings. Well, it's definitely not only for strings. So type option 1. Tuples are fixed in size. Tuples is the same as arrays. I believe they're fixed in size. Oh, they can contain multiple things. I'd say they're the same as arrays. They can't grow. Okay. Okay. Okay, now let's do the arrays versus sets versus tuples. Which of these is best stored as arrays? Messages in our chat program. Which is best stored as arrays? Words valid in Scrabble or the weather forecast for 10 days? I'd say an array of words in Scrabble. Oh, set, because they're unique. Okay. I mean, you could store lines of a poem in an array. Whether or not users logged in, that's more of a single thing rather than an array. So I'd say lines in a poem. Yeah. Songs in an album or the current temperature. So current temperature is probably best as a double, so songs in an album. Height measurement for a child, again, that's probably best of a double, whereas all the usernames on... Oh, okay, so this is a collection of monthly height measurements for a child, so that probably would be best as an array. And a set is probably best for a list of all usernames on Twitter so that they can be unique. So option 1. High scores for a video game, probably an array. Person's names probably is the string, so option 1. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, now it's the test for omitting parameter labels. Let's see if this Swift code is valid. Okay, so it's got the parameter with cheese, but it's only got cheese there, so that's not valid. When it's using an underscore there, I don't believe it... Oh, that's just, it can be called without putting in that name items, so it should still work. So yeah, I'd say this is valid. So it's expecting a string and it's given a string. It's returning true, although this isn't actually doing anything with that, but that is still valid, so I'd say it's true. Ah, it's got to use the message. Okay. Okay. This isn't going to be called. So we can use the underscore there because it doesn't matter which index it's up to, it's just going to run it for however many times is entered. So I'd say this is valid. Again, it's got a string, it's being used as a string, and just doesn't need the name in the parameter when it's being called. So I'd say this is valid. Okay. Returning an int. And it's returning an int. Sum is an int. Okay, again, it's got count poodles dogs, but it's not calling it with the dogs in front of the array of strings, so that's not valid. So it's using a string, and it can be called without putting in the name. I'd say this is valid. Okay, it says it's returning a boolean, but it doesn't have the boolean return in as part of the definition, so I'd say this is false. Okay. Yeah, I'd say this is true. It doesn't have an underscore, so it can't be calling it without the parameter name, so that's not valid. Um, yeah, I'd say that's valid. Okay, it doesn't actually define the student variable, so that's not valid. Okay, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to follow along, the link is in the description. See you in the next one.